everybody. It is Monday, June 15th. This is the regular scheduled Board of Trustees meeting for the Village of Romeo. It is 7:04, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please, Clerk Trapp.
Bartholomew?
Here.
Edwards?
Here.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hart?
Here.
Poznanski?
Here.
Seidel?
Here.
President Malzahn?
Here.
All accounted for?
We have a quorum. Thank you very much. In your board packets, you have the meeting minutes from May 18th. Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes, please.
We have a motion by Edwards.
Support.
Support by Bartholomew. Discussion?
Yes, on those minutes, that was where all the budgetary items were discussed, and, you know, there was no representation from the public. I'm sure they can go on Zoom, but those that were unable to do it on Zoom or whatever were not represented here, so I'd like to make that point before this is voted on.
Okay.
So that it was just putting, that it was an online meeting, virtual meeting?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Bob, can you repeat that? How to word it?
That it was an online virtual meeting.
Okay.
As opposed to public being present.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One.
6-0. Okay.
No,
yeah,
six, I opposed.
You
Yes, I
opposed
said
the
six.
minutes?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry,
thought you
6
said-
to 1, excuse me.
I thought I heard you say
I
zero.
said
the
6,
minutes
but I
you
forgot.
opposed?
Yes.
All right, in your packets, you have the check register report and the council bills. The amount of council bills, $13,935.18, and the check register for $112,743.75. I have a motion to approve the bills.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills.
Motion by Bartholomew. Do we have support?
Support.
Support by Edwards. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Seidel?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
President Malzahn?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion carries. Next up, we have approval of the agenda. I need to request that we add 2 items to our agenda this evening. I have an annexation request by Mr. Chetzahovsky. I would like to add that as line item I under new business. And then I also like to request a closed session for strategy and negotiation sessions with the collective bargaining agreements. So after public comments, I would like to add the closed session, please. Any other additions or deletions?
On the number 11, on B, we were at the Planning Commission, you sent this to us, and we're going over it. We just needed more time to review it. I mean, things like some of the items that we'd like to go over as far as 500 feet from a school. Well, if we use, for an example, Amanda Moore Elementary School, if Mr. Parsons were ever approached on selling his building, a marijuana facility would be eligible right there at that spot.
Can we hold those comments until we actually get to that agenda item?
Well-
It's for review.
Can we, all right, I just asked to eliminate until the Planning Commission can go over these things, that's all.
But we can hear some of your
This body can
thoughts.
hear some of your
Okay,
thoughts
all
and
right.
inputs, and then we can note that.
All right.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have an agenda. At this time, under special presentations, I know that none is on your agenda, but Mr. Zahowski is here, and also Mr. Palomino. Did I say that? Sorry. They're both here. They both. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, President Malzahn. To make a correction, there was not a motion or a second for the agenda item. We need a motion and a second before we can vote.
Oh, okay. Motion to approve the agenda with the 2 additions.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to
Okay.
approve it.
I'll second.
Motion by Hart, support by Seidel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on track.
No
All right.
problem.
Special presentations. We have Mr. Zahowski and the other agenda item, the letter from Deanna and Associates. That presenter is here, so I'd like to invite them both to give their presentations at this time. So, Chester, since you're in the front row, I'll just point to you. And you have at your board table a copy of the letter that Chester submitted to myself and Mr. Clark, and then you also have a diagram of the area for consideration. So those are the 2 documents that he'll be referring to.
My name is Chester Zahowski. I live at 15355 32 Mile. It's still Ray, but we're really in Romeo now because we are annexed in that time back. I'm requesting annexation of approximately 75 acres of property. It's on the east side of Powell. It's in Armada Township. I represent about 5 of my own companies who own parcels in that group, and also Mr. Bob Woods, who is in our complex as well. Jason Blake from the Pond Guy, he has not made up his mind yet if he wants to be annexed in, but all the other areas, or the rest of it, yes, we do want to be annexed in. We've tried over 20 years to work with Armada, from developing our own plant to, I know you had negotiations, previous boards, to do a deal with Armada, and to no avail. And you know, we just can't get there. And so I'm asking the Village of Romeo to consider annexation of mine and several other parcels. And should you approve that, then I'll come with all of my legal descriptions, consent forms, everything that you would need.
May I ask Mr. Clarks if there's anything you'd like to say about this, or anything on your mind?
No. Well, I always say no, lawyers do say no, and then they talk. Nothing substantively. I can just say that the consideration for the council initially is more political in nature than legal. Is this something that you're being requested, so you as a council are not out trolling to add property to the village? A property owner in an adjoining community has requested it. And so your initial consideration, if you think this is a good idea for the village, then there's a process to be followed, which the village recently went through, as Mr. Zahowski mentioned, with respect to another parcel or parcels of property that he owns. So initially your consideration, and I don't mean any disrespect by simplifying it, is whether or not you think this is a good idea, if it's worthy or meritorious for consideration, and if so, then you pursue it. If not, you don't. But at this point, there's no legal consideration, but there is a process if you choose to pursue it.
Thank you.
Does everybody understand that process from what we did with the Ray Township parcel? I think everybody was present for that, so he can certainly go over that process, but at least we have the initial request, so.
You in current communications with Armada Township?
No, I have not talked to them.
You have not talked to them at all?
No. And I have no problem. I'd be happy to hear what you say. I'd be happy to call them in the morning and say what's going on, but it's...
Now you say, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
you had requested services from them for years and unable to receive those services
Yes.
from them?
Yes.
All right, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, I'm not sure who's addressing for the Deanna and Associates, or both? Okay, thank you.
My name is Salvatore Deanna, 1055 South Boulevard East, Rochester Hills. And this is Vito Pamplona, my client for this proposed project. Pamplona Companies has 2 parcels at the northeast corner of Bailey, just north of East St. Clair. And they're 2 existing residential homes right now that he's renting out. We have a site plan proposal for a office building, partly medical building, and we had met with the village planner and the planning department, and before submitting our site plan, the planner suggested that we attend this meeting and ask these 2 items in my letter before proceeding. And we are understanding that if the council were to give us a request, we would be going through the process with the planning commission submittal, and then we'd come back here at the very end for final site plan approval. But initially, there's 2 items. One item is in regard to the parking lot. There's a village parking lot just south of the property, and we would like to use that parking lot for some overflow parking that we won't be able to have on these parcels because of the development and how small the parcels are. With that parking lot, some of the tenants may be medical. They may have some people that are coming into appointments early, and my client would like to maintain the parking lot. He would like to plow, salt, and maintain it. That way, he is confident in that the parking lot will be clear on days of snow and such thing. And the items listed below, these 8 items in the letter, are the items that my client is requesting, and we appreciate if the council would review those. We're happy to answer any questions and move forward with that. The second item pertains to a parcel combination of the 2 properties. So there's 2 properties, 222 North Bailey Street, and I believe everyone has a drawing of it. And the property to the south is 220 North Bailey Street. Currently, 222 North Bailey Street has 10 feet of an existing 20-foot alley that had been vacated. And that 10 feet is part of the property of 222 North Bailey. The property to the south is 220 North Bailey. This property does not have the 10 feet of the alley. The alley is 20 feet wide, so 10 feet would be on our side, and the other 10 feet would go to the property to the east. So we're asking 2 things of this nature. One is for 220 North Bailey to obtain the 10 feet of the half alley, just like the property to the north of it. And the second thing is we would like to go through and combine the 2 properties into 1 parcel. And from talking to the planner, we have to go through the assessing department and the assessor and going through that process. But we are here first asking for council's recommendation to combine those properties with adding the 10 feet of the alley. So currently, these are the 2 things that we are asking for from the council. If we're given approval and we're moving forward, our next step would be to submit site plan drawings to the planner, go through planning commission, and then ultimately come back here for final approval.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so just to touch base on that, yes, they have had some initial conversations with planners, Mr. Casson. His initial look at the site plan was, would this be in compliance with our current ordinances in zoning as it stands right now? There is a provision, which I was not aware of, that we could basically grant him use of municipal parking spaces to obtain the required parking for his occupancy load. So that's what's facilitated the use of the Bailey Street parking lot. Based on what he wants to put there, this proposal, he would need to have more parking spaces since parking is limited in the village. That's what happens with a lot of the properties that are in the southwest quadrant of town behind Younger's and behind the Office Pub. And so they don't own the parking either. So they sort of don't maintain that, but that's how the capacity is required. And then the 10-foot alley that's been vacated, we weren't really able to find much documentation on that and why one got it and the other one didn't. We don't know if it was an application. Mm-hmm. We're just not able to find out why we still technically have 10 feet of a 20-foot alley that used to be ours that's not used as an alley anymore.
Yeah, I was denied 8 or 9 years ago to vacate that alley, so.
And so in order to expedite their process, we know that their site plan right now is non-conforming. It would require a variance and wouldn't meet the zoning requirements from the Planning Commission. So Mr. Casson suggested that they come before this board to see if we would even entertain their ideas, their request, before they go before Planning Commission for actual site plan approval. So that's why it's a little bit backwards tonight that you're hearing them before it goes to planning. But planning would then know that they would be, that this body would vote in favor of that.
So can we make a motion to send these guys to the planning commission? Is that what you're looking for, or is this just?
Yeah, it is on the agenda under E, so we will vote on their proposal when it comes time.
This is the
So is the
presentation.
discussion now?
This is the
discussion
This is the
later?
The
presentation.
discussion will be later, but I just wanted you to know that while they're there giving their presentation, if you have any questions, I wanted to give you the background of why they're requesting this.
So we can group both E and I together then? If you want to send them on to the next process.
I would be the annexation request.
Yeah.
That one was,
Right, two different people, so we'll vote on them separately on our agenda, but yes, they're both on there.
A couple questions that I would have. So on 222 that has already that 10 feet, that's a done deal, that is theirs forever?
Yeah, I currently own the house that's there, and it's basically...
That's your property line?
Yes.
So it's not going to be, if you sold it, that would go with the property. So that 10
Correct.
feet is already given up permanently?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a lot of this sheet I have was obtained from Macomb County records, and it looks like at one point there was a fence or some sort of shed back there, so that owner had probably done something along those lines at the time.
Mark, would you agree with that?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there's a process if you're going to vacate the alley, which we can address when you vote on the item. And I would imagine that in the course of this, at some point, maybe not, maybe you're waiting until this progresses. If it does, if a title insurance commitment was obtained to show the condition of the title, and that would indicate or should indicate who owns what or which property. If the decision is to vacate it, that won't occur tonight, and I can pinpoint the law for you, but typically, if an alley's vacated, it falls to the adjoining property owners on either side. So you'd have to think about, which maybe is something the Planning Commission thinks about, or maybe the village thinks about subsequently. Are you just going to vacate the 10 feet, or are you going to vacate the whole alley? And I'm not suggesting you should or you shouldn't, but whatever you vacate, it's going to fall proportionately on either side. In essence, the vacation runs down the middle of the piece being vacated. So
Okay.
just something to...
And is sale an option at all in that kind of a scenario?
Well...
Can we get compensated for?
The answer is, I guess the village could sell. I'm hesitating because selling alleys and streets involves a different process. And could you sell it? I'm going to say yes. Would I recommend that at this juncture? No, but I'd need some more information before I spoke conclusively about it.
and the village has had zero maintenance of that alley
Yeah.
in
Okay.
forever. Tree trimming, grass mowing, anything, zero.
I didn't even know there was an alley there.
Right.
Well,
If you were to walk by, you
there's
would
one
not-
next door to my house, actually. I've got, we have a wire carpet, it's
Yeah.
actually an alley.
But I'm just saying, there's been
It'll
no-
never be anything else than what it is, but. And then the other question, do you know how many parking spaces are going to be required for what you're maybe looking to be putting in?
Currently, we're looking at, so currently, okay, so on our proposed plan, we're providing 10 on the site that we're able to fit. And I believe, I don't have the exact number, but
Just
just a ballpark, we're looking at approximately another 10 to 15.
And I don't know how many's in, you don't
say, how many are in
know
the
how many's
parking
in the Bailey Street parking.
So is that for
How many are
later?
you required
I mean,
for the size of the
is
building?
that later
itself?
discussion?
We're looking at, so we're 1 per 200 gross is our requirements, and we are at, what's the building size? It was about, so, okay, so we're gonna need about roughly, so it's gonna be closer to 35, so we're gonna need an additional 20 to 25 in the, in Bailey
That's
Street.
pretty much that whole lot.
Yeah.
That's a good chunk of it, quarter if not half.
On this number 6, you have the village take care of any repairs. I think you might want to retract that after you're talking about the number of parking spots.
No, but if you're going to be using all the parking.
Well, do we
that-
get, is this
That's what I'm
discussion
saying.
for later?
They
or-
want-
Yeah, we're just
Right.
asking them
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
I got more questions, but not for them, per se.
Right,
Let our people
for
pay
our
for it.
board discussion,
Right.
yes.
I won't be able to do it.
So 20, 25 additional?
Approximately, yes.
All right.
And when we submit for a site plan, we'll have the exact number.
Right, no, I know, but just so we're knowing,
Yeah.
you want
If
25.
that's what they're required, it doesn't mean that there's going to be 20.
Right, no, I get that.
Okay.
All
Thank you,
right.
gentlemen. I appreciate your
Thank you.
Are you,
presentation.
are you staying for the later discussion?
No, but I'm open for any more questions that you guys may have.
Right.
The main reason why we want the parking is for the approval for the medical. If we went straight office there, we wouldn't be required to have as many parking spots. And if you go, west of there, the Buscemi's and all those other businesses, they use that public parking lot as well as, towards their count for their office space there.
Would you be changing how many are handicapped? Would that be part of that, or?
No, we have the required handicap spaces
Okay,
there.
so they'd stay the same?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the compromise for that is that I would be willing to redo all the landscaping in that parking area, restripe it, maintain it, salt it, everything, besides the infrastructure of it. I didn't install the infrastructure, so I can't guarantee whoever did it did a good job, and I don't want to be responsible for that if, the collars break and the manholes. So, that's kind of the idea behind the park.
Well, I got a question for Mark then, and I apologize for dragging it. If they're leaving, I want to ask them. So if you guys plow and salt it, who's the liability on, the village or on them?
Well,
If someone
probably-
gets hurt or something happens, I mean,
Well,
how does it work?
probably
Both.
both, because what you would, if you're going to go that route, I would recommend that there be a formal agreement as to an allocation of the responsibilities between the village and the property owner. And I would recommend if you proceed to that there be an indemnification provision in there that if, for whatever they're doing, if somebody's hurt or injured because of it, that and the village gets sued because of it, that they would indemnify and hold the village harmless for that. So if you're going to end up in that position, my recommendation would be to allocate that risk between the parties, between the village and the property owner.
We agree. That's what our thought process was as well.
And it would remain, whoever wants to park there can park there, there wouldn't be any restrictions?
Correct, yeah, at any time,
Anybody using it?
anybody can park there at any
Right,
time.
right.
We're just using it for patient
To be
overflow
able
for
to
the
get
building.
your,
I'd say there won't be any signs prohibiting public and just your,
No,
okay.
no, not at all, not at all. I mean, it would look exactly the same as it does right now. It would just be striped, tarred, all the landscaping would be nice and fresh, it'd be modernized. We're asking to paint the light poles, kind of take that whole area and make it a lot nicer.
Yeah, those horrible
But
bushes
We're not
pulled
going
out.
to limit anybody from the village from parking.
And Mark, you mentioned about the dual agreement for responsibilities. So at that time, we would then go over what they have here, 1 through 8, and include what we want, what we're looking for?
Well, you could put that in the agreement, but I think, and we can get into the minutiae, but under your ordinances, and I don't know the formula, but there's an allowance, and Ms. Malzahn touched on this, there's an allowance for use of public parking that counts toward the required number of spaces for any particular use. There are some restrictions on that. You can't cross a major thoroughfare. There are some limitations in your ordinance, but a property owner has the ability within the confines of the ordinance to count public parking spaces toward the required number of spaces. So if it's appropriate under your ordinances, the parking lot, the position it's in relative to the properties about which these gentlemen are speaking, if it's appropriate, if it fits, they can count the parking spaces toward that. That doesn't give them a right to park in those spaces. It gives them the ability to park in those spaces or to have their customers or their clients park in those spaces. And I don't want to get too deeply into the weeds, it's the planning commission's function, but one of the things they may be able to, again, depending on where this ends up, they may be able to put a sign on their property saying additional parking in municipal lot to the south, but they would not be able to put a sign up that says, 8 spaces reserved for A, B, and C business. So it still would be a come one, come all for the parking. And if for some reason there's something going on, either the businesses to the west on the other side of Bailey Street have a function or something's going on, or for whatever reason those parking spaces are all taken, and somebody comes to their business and can't find a place to park, well, that's too bad. I mean, you don't have to allocate the spaces or provide a specific number of spaces in that lot for their use.
Okay.
Would that maintainment go with the property or just their business at the time? So say in 20 years you sell this business, would the maintaining of the parking lot go with it, or does that go with you out the door and then it's no longer taken care
That
of?
would be something that legal would handle, because from what I believe, that maintenance contract would be transferred over with the building sale. I don't see why it wouldn't be, and I mean, if that's something that they want to put in, the agreement, I'm fine with that. I mean, we tried to buy the quarter car wash behind these parcels, and they wanted just way too much money for it. We were going to actually do that.
They never asked me.
Well, my realtor did.
Side conversation, but anyways. I want that alley vacated too, by the way, but anyways.
Well, no, that's kind of what our thought process was, because when the realtor who showed me this property, he says, why don't we try and purchase the quarter car wash? And it just didn't work out. I mean, it wasn't equitable for us. It didn't work with, the cost of building the building.
So, Mr. Clark, to Megan's point, would that be just kind of a simple add-on, like if somebody else bought it?
Well, you'd have to negotiate that. It would have to, in order for it to go from owner to owner, the term is it would have to run with the land. So it would have to be a formal agreement in recordable form that would become part of the chain of title to their properties, and so it would then adhere to those that chain of title, and whoever owned it would have those obligations. That would be a benefit to the village. I don't know what it does to the marketability of their property, but that's not your concern. Your concern is protecting the assets of the village and the residents and property owners in the village.
Okay. And I only have one more question while they're here. Who's the company, I've often wondered this, who's the company that parks
I apologize.
all the cars there? And do we have a formal agreement with them? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
It's just a ride, right, it's just a ride share.
Yeah.
It's just a ride share?
So they park their cars and they hop in a common van and they go.
Yep.
So they're basically using it as a community parking lot.
So they would be able to continue that use? Because that's quite a few cars taking up the spots.
Again, it's first come, first serve,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I don't think it was the intention of the parking lot, no, but that's
No.
how it's being
Right.
used.
On number 6 on your proposal here,
Ms. Chavan.
you have the village doing all the repairing and the patching and the sealing of the lot. I mean, if we go through with this deal. And you just mentioned if you sell it to somebody else, then they'll have that same deal going on. We can't ask taxpayers to pay for something that you're going to be using. And if you happen to sell it, the next person's going to come in and use it. And if their vehicles start tearing up the lot, we have to pay for it, or the people have to pay
Well,
for
the
it.
taxpayers are currently paying to use it right now as it is.
But the way that you have it written down here, is that you're not responsible for any patching, repairing, or sealing. I mean, we could do a deal, you take 50, we take 50. I guess that's what I'm saying.
We're open to it. I mean,
Okay,
this
all right.
came
As long
about
as
as
you're
well
open to it,
because
then.
there's no there's no, nothing in any of the ordinance or anything that we are asking, hey, can we lease certain spots, public parking spots? And we couldn't get a price per spot, and this was, our alternative was, okay, well, under the ordinance, we actually get to use those public spots either way, but in order to make it equitable for the village, we, says, okay, look, we'll maintain it. I mean, legitimately, I don't have to maintain it, and I don't have to spend the money to do that, but I want to do it because if I'm going to own the building there, I want to make sure that it's nice and that the doctors who are, new businesses in the village have a nice place to practice.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your
You're welcome. Thank you.
proposal. All right, let's move on to correspondence. I did receive today a letter from Foster Swift. Let me preface this by saying Mr. Clark received a communication from a new attorney that the Village of Armada has retained to negotiate their a 425 agreement with the Village of Romeo for sewer service to the Armada properties.
Thought they were done with that.
They initiated the conversation with Mr. Clark. He passed that email on to me, and I said, can you please respond and let them know that he doesn't have the ability to negotiate on behalf of the village in any 425 agreement, that it would come before this board. And if they wanted to put together a proposal, they should certainly direct that to me, and I would get it before council. I was going to put this on the agenda for next month because I just received this letter today, but I thought with the request that was before us with the annexation, I would just make mention that I received the letter so that you can know that this request is before us for a new 425 before we vote on the, or in spite, on the annexation request. So
Would this 425 be towards them doing that development east of, it'd be north of, didn't Bruce Township request water services?
no, it identifies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parcels. It identifies Chet's property, number 1, number 5, Joyce and Safety, BC Investments, Blake Investment Properties. It gives ID numbers, basically, that they're looking for. The term is 50 years, subject to an additional 50-year extension. The Village of Romeo would provide all services, including sewer and water service, except that Armada Township proposes to retain jurisdiction for fire service, planning, zoning, and building ordinances, and all inspections. The subject parcels will pay the village for water and sewer services at the same rates as other properties in the village. The subject parcels will be responsible for paying any necessary infrastructure costs for water and sewer. Armada Township is not responsible for the cost of water and sewer services or infrastructure for the subject parcels. And they would repay, the parcels will pay taxes to the Village of Romeo at the village's millage rate, but Romeo will remit Armada's extra voted millage, which is their fire, ALS, library, and general operating. So basically, they just want us to let everybody sign up and pay the same rate that our residents are paying. So I'll be happy to share this once we get down to, talk about it next month or the annexation request. I just wanted you to know that the letter came today. So let's move on to our officer reports. My president's report for June 15th. The village offices are officially back open for public walk-ins. We are open Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 4:30. All of the protective plexiglass and signage has been installed. All staff is back from their furloughs and are reporting for their regular schedules with proper safety precautions in place, which is if you're not feeling well, we ask you to stay home, and those that need to come in to please wear a mask where tolerable. As I mentioned in last month's report, the state legislators approved the HEROES Fund. County officials calculated disbursements based on population and reported COVID-19 expenditures. Romeo's distribution amount will be $37,289. As of today, Romeo has 14 reported COVID cases and 4 deaths. There's 18 cases and 4 deaths in Bruce Township and 88 cases and 5 deaths in Washington Township. Hopefully, we're at the tail end of it. I wanted to publicly thank Woodside Bible Church for the lunch they provided for our office staff on June 3rd. It was very kind of them to include us in their prayer efforts and to nourish our bodies as well. We appreciated the tasty lunch that they gave us from Rustic Bluebird. We have begun in the Village Hall cleaning out the old vault, which is located in the lunchroom, or off the lunchroom of the police department. The police department will be using that space as their new officers' room to make reports and as we finalize the FBI compliance and the Village Hall renovations. I have invited the archivists from Kezar Library to come and review the old logbooks that are stored in there and other documents that may be better served to our residents if they were cataloged and housed in their archives. Some of these documents date back to the early 1900s from what we can see initially. So there's some very, very old documents there that haven't probably seen the light of day in a long time, 40 or 50 years. The archivists are thrilled to be invited to come and take a peek. They'd be stored in their safe along with all the archives from the Romeo Observer. So I think it'd be a very unique opportunity for the residents really to be able to get a look at what that looked like back in the 1800s. Some of the stuff that were reseated, it's very curious what we purchased back then. So we're in the process of moving all that from downstairs upstairs so that it can all be sorted out. And we're working on that. Organizers from the Black Lives Matter movement held a protest rally in Romeo on Friday. It was reported that nearly 1,000 people participated and marched from Croswell Street up to Main Street to Newberry, where they turned and held an assembly in Village Park. There were numerous speakers from both the community and the organizers. The day concluded with the congregational church bells ringing, with everyone observed a somber 8-minute, 46-second quiet vigil. Police Chief Solkonicki reported that there were no problems from any of the attendees. So it was a good day. Nice weather and a nice turnout for our village. So they were very pleased with the event and how things went. All right, that's my president's report. Do we have a clerk's report?
Okay. I would like to thank the cemetery board. We have one member here tonight, and their volunteers for putting flags on the veterans' graves in time for Memorial Day. They worked very hard to ensure every vet got a flag. They are working on updating the list, so if anybody was missed, we will gladly add them to the list for next year because that list is ever growing. Last week I attended the Michigan Association for Municipal Clerks Summer Conference online. It was all online webinars. The actual conference was canceled due to COVID-19. That was supposed to take place on Mackinac Island. There were a total of 8 different webinars that I did attend out of 12 that included such topics as emergency preparedness, notary public updates, cemetery management, legalities and litigation of Freedom of Information Act requests, election audits, and there were also reviews of everyday clerk duties such as accounting and budgeting, parliamentary procedures and rules, ethics and code of conduct, agendas, minutes, and resolutions, in the Open Meetings Act. In regard to the Open Meetings Act, that brings me to an item I would like to address that I get a lot of comments about and I get asked about, so I would like to clarify. Well, not really get asked per se. I hear a lot of comments and assumptions about the posting of meeting dates, time and place, which is in your agenda right now, for that we're voting on. We have to vote on every year at the beginning of our fiscal year. This is what is in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. This is posted. It's posted at the Village Hall, and it's published in a local newspaper of general circulation. This is what's requested by the Open Meetings Act. This is what we need to be compliant with. Agendas are not mentioned in the Open Meetings Act. So if an agenda goes out for a meeting, trustee meeting, HTC, whatever meetings that are gathering within the village, and there's a typo, a time is missed, there's an item that wasn't clearly referenced in the agenda item or worded correctly, that is not a violation of anything but just public opinion. So just to refresh, the Open Meeting Act only requires this as far as our meeting postings. Agendas are basically a courtesy and a way to keep us organized on what items we will be discussing. If you have any further questions about that, I'll gladly show you the video. A lot of the videos from those webinars have been archived on our website I have access to, and I would gladly share with anybody if they have further any questions or on any of the other topics that I had mentioned in my report. That is all.
Perfect. We have a treasurer's report.
Just want to give you an update on the BS&A accounting program. We are able to process receipts more accurate. There are no outstanding items since we've converted to the new system, there are a couple of unreconciled item issues that I'm working with the clerk on in that regards. But the bottom line of it is with that new program system, it allows us to be more efficient. It also gives us the capability that once we do receipt, it is showing up right online through the Village of Romeo website. You can actually see the history. I think there's like 10 years of history that was transferred over. I'll be working with the clerk to get payments for tax, where you'll be able to actually view your tax payment, pay that online. If you do choose to pay it online, there is a 3% fee for processing credit card, and that would be whether you come inside to the lobby or you stay from the convenience of your home. The other way to make payments would be you could, we're still utilizing our lockbox, or you can use the U.S. mail, but then again, we're also open to the general public as well. I had Catherine discuss last meeting about processing the ACH, which is the automatic clearinghouse for the state payments and any other vendor payments. So what'll happen on it is that those payments, those large checks that come in on a monthly, quarterly basis are immediately processed through and credited right to the bank account. And I want to thank Tim, working with Tim, the accountant. We've been, over the last week, been working on setting up the tax base. We've added the cemetery tax and then also updated our records for the Headley rollback, and so that everything that'll be on the tax bill will be accurate. One thing I just want to reach out to the board and make a decision on, out of the 100 or so residents that have shown up on delinquent water bill, we gave them about a month to make their delinquent water. And so as of last Friday, there's been 100, and then 2 have requested financial assistance hardship, and that's due to not receiving unemployment payments. So that would be something that I would like you to be able to vote on, those 2 residents that have requested not to have their delinquent water added to tax. One of the payment amount is approximately $350, and the other payment amount would be about $570. So if you can consider that in making a decision of whether or not that's going to be rolled over. And
Do we have to have a criteria for that, so we treat everybody the same, or is it case by case?
yeah, and with the letter that was mailed out to the residents, there was approximately 156 letters that were generated out. I only heard back from 2 for financial assistance. Otherwise, I would have brought those additional.
Offered to them.
Yes.
And that's who responded.
Correct. And most other residents had made arrangements. They came in today so that the records are current and up to date. Okay. And then as I was on the Zoom meeting last month, I didn't have the ability to be unmuted. And so, Zach, I want to address you. You presented a question to, I think it was Christine, or to the board, or what the proper procedure was, who had the authority to sign checks, payroll checks, and at that current time, Christine signed in my behalf. And I just want to be able to address the board and to the residents is that is generally my responsibility to sign all payroll checks, accounts payable. If I'm out of the office for any apparent reason, I work with the accounts payable person, and I just felt that Christine and her comments were not accurate. She gave out information. I had not been off several days. I had been in the office. I had come in later on in the day. And when I had this opportunity to better serve our residents, I was sold this opportunity as a part-time position, and then during tax, it would be full-time. And so for the past year and a half, I've been working diligently and working as best in my capability in serving the residents. And I've not had any complaints come into my office, nor has Catherine or has Christine, and I'm not sure. I'll point that question out to you as the board. Is there any residents that have indicated that I have not gotten back with them or that I am not fulfilling my responsibility. So I just want to say that I'm available in the office as my schedule permits me, now that we've implemented this new cash receipting program system. It's totally streamlined the amount of time and processing, and once we receipt it, it's live. There's no research as processing in the back room operation that had been going on for some time. So I'm open to any comments or concerns that either one of you as board members, or if anybody would want to mention to me. And that would conclude my report.
Was this something that was supposed to be on our agenda for the 2 people with the water bill? Because we don't have that on the agenda. Is that something we have to address tonight?
I did not see the letter that was sent out, so we talked about it briefly in the office, that it would be a possibility, but I did not see the letter that was drafted and sent out.
Is that something that is timely, or what? Is this something you want us to do tonight?
That would be something that if you wanted to make the decision, I could...
Does it need to be made tonight?
Not tonight, no. But I would say if you could get back with me at your earliest convenience, as I was working with Tim.
Well, it'll be another month.
Okay.
We could give Christine the authority to handle it.
Sure.
All right. That way, put it right there.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes,
You all
that
set?
concludes.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Mannix? Okay. Any trustee reports at this time? Go on the table. Mr. Hart? Okay. Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, I'd like to, first of all, say thanks to the chief. Appreciate what you did that last Wednesday, when you went down there and these idiots wrote that graffiti on that rock. And I appreciate it. I know I called the village hall, and I was very upset that day when it came across to me. So thanks for meeting Mr. Cushenberry down there. And I also like to thank the Romeo Community Schools for the action that they took to get that stuff off that rock, and the kids in the art department. So
It was a good outcome from that.
I mean,
Good stuff came out of
there's
that.
no reason in the world why
None.
these idiots would want to publicize that stuff on their web pages. And it's just ridiculous.
Agreed.
Trying to incite situations.
Yeah, more
Make
good
things
came
happen
out.
that is not there. So, again, Chief, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
So, Mr. Cushenberry's efforts in the Romeo Community Schools.
Is that it? For
Yep.
trustee? Okay. Mr. Seidel?
Just a real quick update on the village to city discussions that we've been having. We had our 4th meeting just prior to this meeting. First 3 were Zoom. This is our first live and in-person meeting, which was kind of nice to see some of the folks in person and have the discussion. So a lot of pros and cons, a lot of facts are being gathered. I think in the next week or so, we're going to put some information together that can be distributed out to some of the village residents. So just wanted a quick update that it's still going. It's meeting on a once-a-week basis, and the folks that are on the committee all come from different backgrounds, and there's a lot of knowledge that people are bringing to the table, which is really good. It's not just this is this or this is that. It's a pretty good cross-section of folks. So that was just a quick update.
Perfect.
No comments here.
Ms. Kosantzi?
I would like to say that I had the privilege of walking in the rally on Friday, and it was very moving. It was very touching to see all of Romeo come together and support all of our residents. And I wanted to say especially thank you to the chief, to Romeo PD, and all the other officers from all the other jurisdictions that came in. Wonderful job. We felt very safe. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, your cars were definitely present.
Yes, I'll go ahead. I was going to wait for trustees' comments for that, but Chief, outstanding job by you and your officers on how they work together with the state police and the sheriff and the neighboring communities that joined in. It was a great event, and I only wish I could have caught the on camera some guy in a big diesel pickup truck pulled up behind alongside on Rawl Street and just put it in neutral and just revved his engine like 3 or 4 times to interrupt a speech that a young lady was giving. And
10-year-old.
He thought he was pretty smart, but what he didn't realize is that there was a state trooper behind him down the street. So as soon as he pulled away, that cop just flew by with his lights on, pulled him over, and chewed him up. So I thought that was pretty cool.
No shenanigans, right? No shenanigans allowed, right,
It was
yes.
a great time had by all.
The officer got a very loud cheer from the crowd.
He did, he got a loud cheer. People were happy about that, so it was a great time.
If we could have done something about the helicopter,
Yeah, the
might have
helicopter
been
wasn't
better.
good.
Yeah, they could have, yeah, it drowned out the sound. But I'd like to talk about the sidewalks. Of course, we were hoping to have been started already on repairing them, but with the COVID-19, spring has passed and now we're into summer. Our contractor, Jeff Rapp, of Rapp's Concrete, he's trying to get caught up on his stuff, and he made it clear he hasn't abandoned us, but he wants to, he needs some time. And so in the meantime, we found another contractor, Harry Schultz, who I met with this morning, and he's expressed interest in doing some of the work. So, even if it takes effort, and then there's one more contractor that I have to contact who somebody recommended, and he seemed interested, and he's local. So even if it takes a few companies to get this going, we sorely need to get moving forward with this, and I'm working on it, so hopefully it'll be soon.
Should that be going out to bid?
Yes.
Well, we're hoping to
Yeah.
retain the same pricing that we had under the current sidewalk replacement, contracts. It's not technically a
careful.
contract, because we didn't sign it, but he offered us the pricing, and that's what we pass along to the residents, and we're still required to fulfill some of that, because a lot of those residents already paid their money, they just didn't get the concrete installed yet due to the timing. So we certainly need to
You might just
to
want
look
to
at this.
post that at the village hall or something, put it out there so people can read it, put it on your website, because they'll automatically think you're picking contractors, hand-picking them, and setting this up.
Right. So that's all I have.
Okay, perfect. Do we have anything from our ex officio planning commission member to report?
Yeah, we're going to cover some of it later on here in the planning commission request for the zoning. And we're also going to cover some of the marijuana, so you want to talk about it now or later?
No, we'll talk about it, if there's nothing additional to those two things, we'll wait till we get down there to the business items.
No, not necessarily.
Okay, there are no committee reports at this time. Public comments, anybody wishing to address the board on any of the agenda items? All right, hearing none, let's move on to our unfinished business. You have at your table, and I apologize, it wasn't until this afternoon that I realized that this did not get included in your packet. This was on our agenda quite some months ago when we looked at the illicit discharge sewer use. There were two sewer use ordinances. This is basically an update that was drafted from the Eagle, and so it's more of a pass-through. Mr. Clark took some time to put it in our proper resolution format, ordinance format, so that you can see it. And, nope, that's not the right one. It looks like this.
This one's off a typewriter.
Right, this is Bruce Township's.
Okay.
Yep. Here's one, you can have this one right there.
Perfect.
There you go.
Oh, it was buried in there.
Right.
The 37 pages?
It has 37 pages, right. Again, there isn't much that changed from year to year. It was something that Eagle contacted Al on, and again, Al, as a pass-through, just asked us to take a peek at it and update our current ordinance.
We actually have HRC drawn up for
Oh, HRC did it, not Eagle, okay. Yes. So since it was left out of your packet, if anybody wants to table it, we can table it again one more month. Because I know you had it to review, it just wasn't in this format when you reviewed it the last time, so
But this was put together by HRC, and
Yes.
do we know what, and Mr. Clark, you've seen this as well, so.
I have, and much of this is current language. There were some specific provisions that HRC recommended be revised or completely changed, and that's been done. So this embodies your existing sections of your ordinance 44-161 through 44-303 with the changes that HRC recommended to Al. So this brings those sections of your ordinance current based on what your consulting engineer has recommended.
paid for through the SAW grant too, so we didn't pay for it.
Right,
Nice.
okay. I mean, I'm not going to be reading this to make any changes from this, so.
Do we need to make a
I-
resolution or a motion?
Yeah.
I need a motion to either adopt this as amending our ordinance or a motion to table.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt this as our current ordinance.
Support?
All right, so we have a motion by Poznanski, we have support by Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to our marijuana ordinance reviews. Hopefully, everybody brought theirs from last month. Again, I handed this out just in hopes that everybody would take some time and sort of digest this. You asked me to put together 2 ordinances, one for medical, one for recreational. That's the nature of the difference between the two. There are obviously some governing bodies, so some wording is different between who inspects what and who, controls those provisions. It did go before Planning Commission, and they questioned some of the repeal numbers that were cited in this document don't exist because we don't have that zoning ordinance in place yet. It would basically enact it. It's not been drafted because we don't know if this is even going to be moved any further. So, but they voted to table that at their Planning Commission meeting, so they will hopefully be revisiting it in the next month. I did request Chairman Jim Stegner, Village Planner Steve Casson, Mr. Clark, and myself. We have set a meeting for Thursday so that we could review it internally, hopefully with the input that this board is going to bring tonight, and then look to what the Planning Commission may need so that hopefully they can look at it in July and then recommend adoption for us if that's the decision that they want to make, and it would incorporate all of the changes. So I'll open it up if anybody has any discussion points. I know, Zach, you mentioned a few.
Yeah, we would like to give you our suggestions, this body our suggestions, and then you can incorporate them and then go into your, because, we come up with some questions that reading this thing, and that's why we chose to table it. Like I mentioned, the 500 feet from the schools, a minimum 500 feet. And I brought up Mr. Parsons' place as an example, who runs a body shop right on the corner of Dickinson and Clinton. Well, right now he's grandfathered in, but if he gets a lucrative price, he'll sell out in a heartbeat. Now we have that facility right there because it's grandfathered in of its usage. So we would just want to identify a few of these situations that you have in here. Because right now it's a blanket situation.
Well, I thought that I had put in here some directives in coordinating the area in the industrial park that would be allowed.
Right.
Not just anything zoned industrial, but that it would be
You put a boundary around it.
East of 53.
East of 53, north of Powell Road, so that it was that industrial park, not anything industrial that would be within the village boundaries, and that's in here somewhere.
Yeah,
So certainly there's no
that's the parts we're
schools.
digesting. That's why we just want to make sure we give you our suggestions.
No.
And then you can go for it, as
Yep.
opposed to you giving us your suggestions.
But I do think that's what we're all pretty much in
Yeah.
agreement. We want that over in the industrial.
Yeah, we don't want to smell it.
But even if you're grandfathered in, you can't just open a completely different business in that same location. right?
Well, the things.
But I wouldn't even
right
allow
now,
it.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
but like, for example, the car wash is grandfathered in as light commercial, but if I cease operating as that, I can't open as a new one. I'd have to open following whatever the guidelines are for the commercial business district now, and I think the same would fall with.
Do we want that opportunity to
No,
have
we
a
don't.
question?
But we want
That's
more
what we
than
want.
500
We want-
feet,
Yeah, I mean, no, I
The school
agree
distance,
completely with
right.
what you're saying, but I
We wanna
think
be
there's
in a
also something
district,
there that
a
protects
defined
us from
district.
doing that,
Yeah, exactly.
along with putting some writing in here that further solidifies that.
That's what we'd like to
happening.
do is, we're going to have our meeting next month anyway, dealing with
Yeah.
Right.
the other two situations, so we can give them to you, and then the next meeting, I think that would.
Yes.
That would
Do you have
probably be
anything
the
else that
best.
you noted that, aside from the 500 feet of school, that you saw that you really?
Also, the ordinance number that didn't exist, so.
Right,
No,
that's,
it's-
again, because it hasn't
Yeah,
been
I mean,
drafted,
so
but yep,
it's just stuff that
okay,
we looked at and said, let us look at it again and then give it to you.
okay. Is there any new input from any of the council members as you reviewed it that you would want to make sure was included or not included? I know, Megan, you had inquired about the process before, which, what if we decide that we want to adopt these ordinances, we would have to certainly work on the process, because it references that
Yeah.
that there
that's-
is a process, we just don't know what that is
That would
yet.
be the next step.
Okay.
Well, I read there was a lot of articles in their review magazine, and everything that I've read just, to me, says whatever we need to do to continue to move forward with this expeditiously, we should.
Yeah, because they really kind of pushed it, you kind of like beat the crowd.
Right.
Because soon, everybody's going to be getting that.
Right. Stay on the cutting edge of it, sure.
Right.
But I think that's what makes it important, that we have our ordinances in place and we
Oh,
are
absolutely.
firm in
Yes.
what we're doing so
Yes.
that we can deny or accept without having 48 meetings to
But it was a
cover
very
every
positive
variation they
magazine.
come to us with.
Yes, and it very, one side or the other, it was just, here's the facts, and,
Right.
yeah, here's your pros and your cons, and you make the decision for
Yeah,
your
it wasn't
community.
arguing morals or anything like that, it was just arguing business.
Practices, yep.
I do have one question, maybe Mark, you could touch on it. So at first we had opted out, now we are opting in. Is it really that easy on the last page where you repeal the ordinance and you're done and it's no longer allowed? Or is there more steps to that?
No, it should be that, because under the medical marijuana, you didn't have to do anything. If you did nothing, you were automatically, the village was automatically opted out. On the recreational, you had to affirmatively opt out. They were just the opposite in terms of the treatment. And so you did that, you opted out, and so you would have to repeal or rescind that and affirmatively opt in, if that's what your choice is.
And if we decide to go backwards again, it's that easy to rescind our opt-in and go back out?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I suspect...
We'd have to change the ordinance.
I suspect not. You would have to change the ordinance, and then, which you could do, I believe, but then you would be left with a situation where, and I have to be careful here because I don't want to make somebody else's argument for him or her, but if somebody establishes a business based on your ordinances and you repeal or revise those ordinances, you're allowed to do that. You may have an issue, a claim that somebody is grandfathered in. Well, you allowed me to do this, so you can't put me out of business. Maybe you don't have to let anybody else do this, or maybe you change the rules under which you let somebody else do this. But you can't just unilaterally pull the rug out from under my business. So I would have some concerns about that. I've not looked at it. Can you change your ordinances? Yes, you can. To what effect? I don't know, I don't have a comprehensive answer to you or for you, but I can tell you if somebody's relied on it, the likelihood is they would have some claim as to be able to continue to do what they're doing. That doesn't necessarily mean other people can as well.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? All right, so hearing no other input, then we'll just proceed with the meeting that we have set for Thursday, and then look for whatever input the Planning Commission has at their next meeting when they review it further. So,
Great.
all right, so no action needs to be taken on that. Let's move on to new business. You have in your packet the budget amendments. Just looking at the top sheet is really what you need to consider. The fourth column from the right-hand side, the net gain, net loss.
Getting there.
There you go.
Getting there.
I know, the packet wasn't so thick, it'd be a lot easier. Basically, the all funds total is really what that doesn't appear, that net loss of $95,000 overall for this fiscal year is where we're going to end up. But just looking at, we had a net gain in the general fund of $37,299. We had a net gain in the municipal fund of $90,085. We had a net gain in our cable fund of $27,206. We had a loss of $8,652 in the public improvement fund. That's because we booked some things to that fund using prior year fund balance, where there really wasn't anything in that fund that on the numbers. So that's why that's a little bit of a negative. The capital sewer had a net gain of $36,466. The capital water fund had a net gain of $98,993. And our water and sewer funds both operated at a loss. sewer, $183,958, and the water, $193,036. So all funds tallied together. Overall budget, we're at a loss of $95,597. So we're looking just to have a motion to make these budget amendments to end our fiscal year 2019-2020.
I'll make that motion.
So we have a motion by Hart. We have support.
Support?
Support by Bartholomew. Roll call, please.
Hart.
Yes.
Bartholomew.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
Fowler.
No.
Poznanski.
No.
Settle.
Yes.
President Malzahn.
Yes.
5-2 vote.
Okay. Budget amendments adopted. You have in your packet the 2020-2021 fiscal year meeting dates. One meeting every month, typically the third Monday of the month, with the exception of January and February because of Martin Luther King Day and President's Day. This was the first year that we opted to put it on the Tuesday instead of moving it a whole week. And obviously, we've kept that the same as the recommendation. So
Yep.
looking for a motion to approve the dates.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 schedule as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I would like to request that we put on there the South Building Meeting Room. This address is listed exactly the way it was when we met in the other room. It could be confusing that we have moved and it's not put on here.
The problem with that is that if something happens to this building, we have no power, a tree falls down, we're scheduled to meet in this room, this is where the meeting has to happen. And if the room isn't here, then we're kind of at a loss. Not putting a room, which is the way we've always adopted before, gives us the latitude that if we need to change locations, we can, because it's posted with this general address. So the meetings will happen on this campus somewhere, but not in a specific room.
Which I could agree with if it was in the same building. It's in a separate building.
So do we just put a sign on the glass
That's what we've done before, over on the other.
just pointing over here?
Yeah.
Because I
Yes.
agree with what Megan's saying, but it's like,
Yeah.
Well, we have
There's
some
no
new-
real way to do it other than maybe signage or something.
Right. We do have a new signage a new sign that's being made by Larry Whitcomb that'll be posted out by the door. That'll actually be our red emblem. Just hasn't happened yet. There'll also be a emblem that'll be behind us hanging in the curtains that'll designate this as the room. Because right now, we just have the little white sign that says, meeting room. But the purpose of not specifying a room is just so that we have the latitude in case of an emergency. Mark indicated to me once before that the power went out in the other building and they actually took the meeting outside in the parking lot, right? So, I mean, if we had to, we have the latitude to move it. So I'm hesitant to accommodate your request to put the meeting room on there. But we certainly can make some accommodations for some clear signage that's installed outside. So we had a motion by Hart, we had support by Seidel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Nay.
opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. So
How many
6 to
opposed
1?
was that?
Just Ms. Wozniacki.
6-1?
6-1.
All right, in your packet, you have the Planning Commission request for rezoning recommendation. The Meldrums have this on the agenda at the last Planning Commission meeting. We had, with the storm that blew through the village last week, we lost power and internet, as the south half of the village did. So we were without IT in the village offices till after the packets went out on Wednesday. So we didn't get the request for the inclusion of the petition that came through email. Ms. Cushenberry, I see, is in the audience. If anybody would like to see that, we can certainly do that. There was about 70 residents that signed the petition asking the Planning Commission to vote in opposition to the Meldrums' request. And again, and I have that here, anybody wanted to look at it. But basically, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to deny their rezoning request for the proposal. They wanted to build an 8-unit apartment complex on the corner of Clinton Street. As procedure would have it, the agenda item goes before Planning Commission, whether it's denied or approved, then it comes for this village board to either uphold or overturn their ruling. So that's why we have it on our agenda now. So, if
Well, I
Mr.
guess I'd
Fowler.
like to make a motion to deny the request.
Second.
Okay.
Bart's got it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Edwards, we have support by Bartholomew. Any other discussion?
I just want to mention, I saw the meeting, and they did a good presentation. I fully agree with the board not wanting to make the rezoning, but it was certainly the right of the property owner to bring that before the board. And again, they did a great job, but it's being, so I would support that we uphold their decision.
I think Mr. Nelson did a heck of a letter that he provided. We didn't have it in our packet, but we did have it in the planning committee packet. He's here tonight. And I think Mr. Smiles on the planning commission board said it right to us. Would you want it next door to you? Do you want to look at it? There were a lot of good questions that were asked, like the garbage trucks coming in. What's going on? Mr. Foltz asked that question. You know, how are they going to do this? I know they talked about the old electrical building across the street, but that place, they barely operate a business over there anyway. They're only there just to shuffle trucks in and out every now and then. But, you know, the community is not against the ideal of bringing these in. It's just there's a place for them. And that's why everybody was getting upset for this fact that I know they mentioned it could be a buffer zone between residential and light industrial, but they wanted to come right there on that corner, which is an entire residential corner, right? Entire residential block. So the Planning Commission did a good job and looked at every aspect of it. And the residents put out their petition, and the impacts of residents living on East St. Clair Street. Guys, make sure your city to village, make sure you talk to them, because they have a lot of things to say.
I'm sorry, just for better record keeping, are you able to, can you please make the motion stating that you are upholding the Planning Commission's recommendation of denying the rezoning request? Just makes for better record keeping, please.
Okay, amendment is,
Sorry, but
repeat that again?
we just went through this in class last week. If you can make the motion stating that the board will uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation of denying the rezoning request.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to uphold the Planning Commission's suggestion of denying the rezoning request.
Thank you. Okay. Do you still support that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Pretty impressive by the number of people that signed the sheet.
Absolutely. All right. I don't believe we need a roll call, so just all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. We have up the annual SMART contract. This is, again, just a pass-through. I don't know why we have to do this every year, but basically, you know, the funds are captured. They're turned over to the village. We need a resolution or a motion to allow the treasurer to disperse these funds over to SMART or Star Transportation.
I'll make the motion to disperse the funds over to Star Transportation.
Support.
We have a motion by Settle. We have support by Hart. Roll call, please.
Motion by Seidel. Hart.
Yes.
Bartholomew.
Yes.
Poznanski.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
President Malzahn.
Yes.
Motion carries. That's everybody.
They will get their $3,534. All right. Next up, we have the letter from Deanna Associates. That was the presentation that the second presenter that we had.
I'd like to make a motion that we send this to the Planning Commission for review, back to the council. I mean, is that the motion that we need?
I think we have to.
There were three
the
things
parking
they
lot.
wanted, right?
The parking lot is the,
To approve their conditions.
They wanted to maintain it, they wanted to vacate the alley, and they wanted to combine it into one parcel.
right.
Correct.
But the question is whether village council will allow them to use the Bailey Street because that's contingent whether the
So-
planning commission can do something, so.
So I guess they can
want
use it no
that from
matter
us.
what.
Correct.
They can use it no matter what, so I don't know why
But the
they
plan,
want
but the planning
permission.
commission, if they don't have the approval by us to use 25 lots, then the building is not, it's not going to be
So
compliant.
they have to have official
They need to
permission
have
to
us.
use the lot,
Correct.
even
That
though
we
you know,
waive.
we're not giving them 25
Correct.
spaces.
Because,
We're
because
not
they would
giving-
say,
We're not giving them.
they would say no,
Yes.
because you don't have enough parking for that structure. They have some on site, but they're 25 parking spots too short. That's what the planning commission would tell them. So now if we're putting the cart before the horse, we have to say, okay, we think this is something to look at. It's still going to be how everything's going to be, how the building's going to be, but the parking requirement, this board is willing to have them utilize that requirement. We're going to waive that requirement and let them use our municipal parking to satisfy that requirement.
But do we want to waive it now? Do we want to send it to that committee, the planning commission, so they can work with them?
But the planning commission sent it to us.
We've never
because-
seen this.
No, the planning commission
We-
hasn't seen this.
we
Village
have never
village
seen
planner,
this.
village planner met with them and said, these would be the requirements
seen this.
Okay.
for your site plan review. You would need to get authorization from village council to do this.
Okay. So
Based
Steve-
on the planning commission's recommendation that the site plan meet all of the zoning and the ordinances.
We haven't
So,
seen
right. You haven't seen this?
We
you
haven't seen this.
This is actually a revised site plan that I haven't seen either. It's their second concept drawings that they brought to us, and it was much less usage for the Bailey Street parking lot. But the procedure so that it can come to you still doesn't guarantee that they're going to be approved.
Correct.
It is your,
But we can work with them.
exactly,
And that's
but
what I'm
knowing
saying.
how
We
this
can-
board feels about their proposal, right? We would initially have to say, yes, we would allow this, we would look at that usage and say, we'll make the exception that if you put these 4 buildings here with this capacity, we understand that you will require 25 parking spaces in the municipal to meet the code. That's the same thing that happened, again, behind Younger's and the Office Pub and some of those other businesses that are there. They don't have any parking, so they can utilize the municipal lot behind them to meet that code.
But we're not setting aside any number of spaces.
Correct.
In that municipal lot. Like the Bailey Street parking lot, we're not going to be setting aside.
No, we're not.
But I
I
think
mean,
that
We're not
But-
setting aside
But we're
it
letting
right
them
now.
waive that. It's like Hans Financial could not build a 2-story building because they didn't have the parking. At the time, the village council offered to sell them ones over in the lot. That was a different scenario. What we're saying, we would entertain the option to waive that requirement because they have the municipal parking. So,
So we're basically giving them the same opportunity that we've given the other businesses that we've,
Correct.
so
Yeah.
I guess then, I'm in favor of doing that if we've
right, if
already
we
set the
think,
precedence.
if
I
we
would
think
second
that's a good
Mr. Fowler's
development,
motion.
you know,
Right.
and
But I think,
Send it to the planning commission.
right, to Zach's point, though, as long as they're not, I think is your point, as long as they're not putting signs out there that say, these are my parking spaces. So I agree, give it back to Zach and
Or the
the,
planning commission. Yes.
And what I like
That's where
about
it
it
needs to start.
is that he seems sincere about maintaining that parking lot, and it's always been an issue. You know, it's always been kind of left behind and looking raggedy, and we've always
This
wondered what to
body's
do with it.
discussing
And here's a man that's
that stuff.
come stepping forward and saying, hey, I'll take care of the parking lot too, you know.
it's just the only,
because
the
if we wouldn't
liability
entertain,
piece which
if we
Mark.
wouldn't entertain it, it would be a moot point.
Can we
The
tie
planning
in those
commission would
trees
deny
that run
it.
along that residential house right there? Could we
You've been
tie
trying
that
to get-
into
you've been
it
trying to get that
also?
fixed for a
Yes.
couple of
Yes.
years.
He's already acknowledged that.
To try to make it happen.
Back when I spoke to them, but it's been years, they requested a fence, but I don't know, that was a couple years ago.
So what's the motion?
For office.
I think the motion is that we agree
We agree to.
to let
they're
them go
requesting?
forward and work
Cool.
with the planning
Yes.
commission.
That was my motion.
Motion by Fowler, second by Poznanski? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not the chair.
No, I just want to clarify, because I'm unsure of, Zach, is your intent to let the planning commission know that this council would be in favor of their letter of request in consideration for their site plan approval from your body? I just didn't know if you're saying you wanted to negotiate these points, or if you're going to
Yes,
say that
yes.
we've already negotiated these points and this body is in favor, now let's look at the site plan review. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I need
Well,
clarification.
I'm not 100% sure if this body's in favor, but what I'm saying is there's the process, and the process to work with these people to comply with our ordinance, and that's the group to work with them to bring it back to this body, who then makes the policy.
I guess what we would maybe want
we don't
is
wanna
a
make the policy
resolution
now.
that this body would entertain that, because I don't know that we've looked at all those fine points there, but that this body would,
Yeah, I would entertain, I would want to know
Entertain that.
what, exactly how many parking spaces they're requesting and how many we have there to also.
We can hatch it out there. You don't need to hatch it out here.
And is there
That's what I'm
anything,
saying.
Mr. Clark, is there anything, do you have any input, or?
He's feverishly looking it
I
up.
know
in
that.
ordinance.
I saw that.
I'm quite certain in your zoning ordinance, and I apologize, I cannot lay my eyes on the specific provision, but I'm quite certain in your zoning ordinance, I know this much, there is a schedule of how many off-street parking spots are required depending on the use. There's a schedule in your zoning ordinance for that. And this is an office use further refined by a medical office. And so there's a schedule with the number of spaces that are required. Without amending your ordinance, you can't alter what your ordinance requires
they're
as far
expecting
as
about 30, I think.
as far as the off-street parking. Somewhere in your ordinance, which again, I apologize, I can't lay eyes on, there's a provision that says, and the specific circumstances have been mentioned, some of the businesses in the core downtown have used the number of spots in the municipal lot to fulfill the off-street parking. And that can be done here, but you have to follow your ordinance. You can't just waive it. You can't just say, well, the ordinance requires 15, but you can use 20, or whatever it is. You have to follow your ordinance. And without telling you what number can be used from the municipal lot, you're still going to wrestle with that, but I don't think you have to wrestle with that tonight. I mean, that would be something the planning commission would consider, look at what the ordinance requires, whether the application meets the ordinance. If not, how do you address that problem if you want to go forward? Does it require an ordinance amendment? Is there some type of variance that might apply? That gets the cart a little before the horse tonight, but you can't just, by resolution, waive the requirements of a submission for the use. You have to follow your zoning ordinance.
But isn't it just a first come, first served? And if they take the first 25 spots, they take the first 25 spots.
Right.
I mean,
Right. The question really isn't are there going to be dedicated spots, because my recommendation is no, there will not be. The question is how many off-street spots or parking places are required. Do they have the ability to provide that? They're telling you tonight, no, they don't. So they need to count additional spots in the public parking lot, and the question becomes, does the ordinance permit that? My answer generally is yes, I think it does. I just can't tell you as we sit here tonight what that formula is.
And they want to know, so that they'll proceed, if we would entertain that or not. Because if we won't, it's a moot point, and they got to come up with another plan.
But if the ordinance, if the ordinance allows them to do it, you can't say, well, the ordinance permits it, but we don't like it, so we're not going to let you do it. I mean, you have to, it rains on both sides of the scrimmage line. You have to follow the ordinance with respect to the requirements, and they get to rely on the ordinance with respect to the requirements.
But we have to allow them to use that off-street.
I don't think you do. That's what I want to verify in the ordinance. I think the ordinance specifically says that if you're, and I think it depends on whether you're crossing a major thoroughfare or not.
Is that what might have happened with Hans? The street, it was across the street?
It could have, yes, it could have happened. That could be a point there. But if they're allowed under the ordinance to count the spots, then you can't tell them they can't count them. If they're not allowed to count spots in the municipal lot, then absent amending the ordinance, you can't just say, yeah, okay, you can count them. There's not a waiver provision in there. They either get to count them or they don't, and if they do, you look at the formula and they get whatever spots on a first come, first served basis. It's not a dedication. Right. Or if they don't get to count them, but you think they should, then you're going to have to consider an amendment to your ordinance.
If they don't get to count them, there's a whole lot of businesses downtown that are out of sync.
Right.
So if we go through all the proper steps and Zach's board approves it and all that, and then they use 50 spots instead of the 25, do we have anything to stand
There's
on?
not even there.
I know, but okay, so they fill up the entire lot.
Right.
Do we have a leg to stand on, or is it still
Probably-
first come, first served?
Probably not, right.
Probably
Yeah, so-
not. It's
So
gonna-
just put it all with Zach and the committee and
It's-
with the planning board.
There we go, I think.
And as far as,
Um,
go ahead.
No, that was it, just put it with the planning commission and,
The cars that are there, though, I mean, I'd like to see a sign like the other public parking lots where you're not allowed to park from 2 to 6 or 2 to 5, because those cars are parked there all night long. And as far as I'm concerned, it seems to be just a convenient storage place for them. So if somebody does come in the morning, first come, first serve is out the window, because they park there all night. So I don't know, I'd just like to see a sign in there saying.
That's a
Well, we
separate thing.
have
That's probably a
encouraged-
good
That's something that
idea.
I'm bringing up now because I don't.
We have encouraged our retailers and our store owners to have their employees park there because we wanted to save those spots in front of the stores for people, so.
But overnight,
It's-
you could sit there and say you can't keep them overnight. That may,
There's sometimes-
you know, the vehicles
Yeah,
run, you know,
One
they
of the
aren't.
only places that you can park overnight in a municipal
Right, I
lot
think
without
they hope
getting a
so it's
ticket.
only open-
Yeah, no, but if there was a sign there that
That's
said you
why,
couldn't do it, those
yes.
cars wouldn't be there. So
Right.
we can address later.
Yep.
Exactly, okay.
Okay.
So my motion's up still?
Yes, right, and you have support by Poznanski, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, planning commission gets the task. All right, we have the hazard mitigation plan. Hopefully everybody got the note that says in your email, you have this 315-page document. Again, this is a pass-through, this is an adoption, a resolution that FEMA adopted, they crafted it. You can read the email that Dan forwarded to me. Each jurisdiction needs to pass a resolution adopting the new plan. As you know, the hazard mitigation plan expires in June. This mitigation plan for 2020 through 2025 has been completed, submitted, and approved by FEMA. So, I don't know who read the 315-page document. I know I did not, but I trust that FEMA has taken into account what we need to do in any hazardous mitigation circumstances.
I'll make the motion that we accept the hazard mitigation plan adoption resolution as presented.
a second.
So we have a motion by Bartholomew, we have support by Seidel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Quick and easy one. First annual Community Shred Day.
Yay.
Yay! Bruce Township had approached, we did the community, right, I know, exactly, we'll shred all of our packets. We did the electronics recycling day over in Bruce Township. There's supposed to be again one this year in the village offices. We're gonna try and do it 2 times a year. Paper shredding and then electronics recycling. They pay one, we pay one. Residents from either can participate one or both days. So.
And it will be over on Bruce's site.
Yes, in September. The second day in September will be in Bruce Township. This Saturday.
That's the shredding one?
Yes, the shred one will be June 20th. So the event is free to anybody. It will cost the village $600. We're paying for one. They're paying the $600 for the second one. If for some reason they run into a second truck, there could be an additional cost, but typically they limit it to 5 banker's boxes per resident. If anybody shows up with a steak truck and they have more, they're invited to come back at the end. If there's room in the shred truck, then we'll take that material, but we're asking everybody to limit it to 5 boxes, free to the residents. Just show up. We will check IDs. Make sure you're either a Bruce Township or Village of Romeo resident and come. The way we're gonna do it is ask everybody to enter off of Rawls. So the parking lot into the municipal lot on the other side of the old abandoned Arts and Eclectics building, we're gonna ask you to enter into there, and then you'll come up through the police department, past the police department, up to the shred truck, and then enter out onto St. Clair. So we're just gonna form a loop. Pull in, no 3-ring binders, no, what were the other things that you couldn't bring? 3-ring binders. Hardcovered, right, books, basically just papers. You can bring them in a box or in a bag. They have to be emptied into like a hopper, and then it's like a big recycle cart, and then they will enter it in. The shredding is done on site while the people wait, so you can be assured that by the time you drive off, there'll be no pertinent information left for anybody to tape back together.
And staples are okay?
Staples are okay, yep, but no like metal binder clips. All right, so big announcement on that. No board action is needed. We're just updating that. And then we have the COVID-19 outdoor service area. I received a letter from Justin Parker, who's here, and he had a suggestion that we expand our outdoor service areas for our local bars and restaurants, which is something that I've already done. So I have a couple of requests in that administratively I already approved to expand. One was for Youngers. They wanted to use part of the alley that's behind their building for 4 patio tables with umbrellas, as well as Main Street Cafe, Coffee House wanted to go down further Starkweather Alley and in front of Starkweather Arts Center. Starkweather gave them permission to sort of use that patio space. So administratively, these are temporary, a temporary zoning compliance certificate under this back to normal. I know everybody's restricted to 50% capacity with all this cleaning and whatnot. So I wanted to make it as easy as possible for our restaurants, and I think that was Justin's intent as well. His proposal included a different point of view, so I put it on the agenda just to ask for feedback, because his proposal includes using parking areas, whether on Main Street or in the municipal lot. And so it wasn't something that I would be in favor of when I considered expanding, again, in a temporary manner. One, I think all of our businesses have been affected by this COVID, and taking away parking, limiting parking for a non-restaurant or a non-bar would limit their customers' ability to get to their restaurant. So I really didn't think it would be fair to utilize those parking spaces. I also looked at it from a safety and liability issue. I mean, I don't necessarily want to sit in a parking lot, and maybe somebody does, but the barrier and the separation that would have to take place to just ensure public safety, I thought would be too big of a concern. So if anybody is in favor of me expanding that, we can talk about doing parking lot areas. But I think just utilizing whatever possible space that we have right now, whether it's in an alley or if somebody owns their own parking. One of the areas that brought to mind would be Vito's, and I threw it out there to him that if Vito at Bon Appetito wanted to expand out, he owns those 3 parking spaces, so it would be his liability on his property to have outside patio seating or outside dining. So in that instance, I would probably consider that, but I'll throw it out to the floor if anybody else wants me to consider anything. Yes.
No, thanks, Justin.
Yes, I'm also going to continue to grant them a dedicated parking space. Some of the businesses that have curbside pull-up parking, I mentioned that when the COVID shutdown first started, that I would allow them to put up an A-frame sort of sign, and so that somebody could pull up right out front and easily have their carry-out delivered right to their door. So I just plan to sort of continue that through the summer. In your packet, I did include a new concept from the the Liquor License Commission is expanding options, again, under this COVID circumstances, for drinking districts to be established. So you can designate an area, but the license holder still has to apply for the permit, right? So they could say, hey, I want you to designate Romeo Village Park as a drinking district.
I got a car wash parking lot if you want to use it.
Again, it has to be the liquor license holder that would apply for it. I approached the Lions just to see if they would be interested in, I didn't know if they were aware of that, so that if part of Peach Fest could maybe still go on if they needed to expand their service area outside of either one of those.
So they don't have to be connected?
They do have to be adjoining to their property, right? There doesn't have to be any fencing, and from what I understand through the rules, they have to serve their beverages in their marked container, so they just can't sell cans of Bud Light and people walking around town. So it would have to be in, I don't know if they put stickers on cans of Bud Light and say it comes from this establishment, but there are rules. It's an option. Again, if anybody was
Well, one of the things,
interested.
this SVM, this specially designated merchant,
Yes.
we're talking about carryout. You going back to what you just said, you could have a carryout dinner order from Vito's place, and you could get a bottle of beer to go with it, or a
Yes.
couple bottles, or wine.
Yes, and most of the establishments already have that already have the liquor license. So Youngers was able to do that and sell refill growlers. Right, when you came in, you picked up your order, you could get a growler refill, and he was able to do that
I
under
have to
his.
admit, I'd never heard of that
package.
before,
Oh,
till this.
okay, well,
So I didn't know that that was a possibility.
so now you know.
I don't know.
Yes.
The more you know.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to? Okay. Okay.
The parking, I wasn't so much thinking the main streets is maybe like behind the parking areas.
Yeah.
I know that Nikki at the office doesn't really have a patio in the rear, which Glenn does, so he's able to sort of just add an extra few tables off of his service area. But again, if Nikki wanted to bring that and put some sort of
Because they do
temporary
own the
seating out
property
there.
next door.
Yeah, that
She does
alley,
have
that-
some area.
Right, next
Yeah, she has
door would
some
be
room she
ideal.
could-
Yeah.
she could
Especially if
grow.
that concrete could sort of be repaired, because I think
Right.
it's a bit of a trip and fall hazard myself, but certainly there's some opportunities.
There's
I was
some
thinking
options.
Dimitri could do the same thing with the alley on his side. So I think we have, if
Just
anybody is interested, that we have
individual
some latitude.
basis.
And, right, I wanted to address it on an individual basis, because each quadrant has its own, pros and cons, and there's so many differences with the width of the sidewalk in one step or two steps, but, so I'm already working with them, and hopefully everybody will just be back to normal real soon.
And it's nice to see Coney Island utilizing their patio. They put out the tables with the umbrellas.
Very
It's nice.
nice. Yeah, it's very nice.
Absolutely, so, thanks again for the legwork that you did do, Justin. All right, we added agenda item I, the annexation request for Mr. Zahowski. Again, I made mention of the Foster Swift letter. I don't hold out the highest of hopes that we would really be able to negotiate with Armada with a new 425 that would be financially beneficial to the village over an annexation request. So it's my recommendation that we move forward with the proposal that Chester has brought and entertain his terms, get, the list of all the property owners that are committed to this process so that we could make a better determination and hold off on the 425 offer from Armada.
Second.
I agree.
Okay.
I was going to ask if there was a motion.
It can be my motion, yes.
Second.
Okay.
Second
We've tried to
agreed
work
on.
with Armada.
Yeah, I
We've
agree.
given them
On the
much
second or the
time,
third or whatever.
Yes.
multiple years,
looking for
money
revenue.
at the cost of the
Well, it's
villagers.
just been on the docket
I think
for
it's
20
time to
years.
try
Yes, it
something
is.
new.
Right. I was quite disappointed when I read that they really just wanted their residents, their businesses to pay the same rate that everybody else pays.
And at our cost to our employee, yeah.
Yes. So, that was my motion. I'm sorry, who supported?
Everybody,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you.
So we'll see.
Yes, let me know. We will
Thanks, Jeff.
talk. All right.
Thank you.
Next up, public comments. Anybody in the audience that wanted to make a comment? Yes, would you just please come up and,
Good evening, Mr. Blanchard on Dickinson Street. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address you guys. I want to say, one, thank you for your due diligence in turning down the new proposed apartments in my neighborhood. I agreed with everything, everybody that asked. I'm a builder, and I did the math. It wasn't going to work. Just wasn't going to work. Secondly, I had just learned of the Deanna Associates, and you guys were referencing the park and ride lot, which I call, which is the public lot there behind Four Corners Diner. If you make that a non-parking at night, you're taxing the people that use these vehicles to carpool, to get to work. Some of them come from Armada, K-Pac, Yale, and the people that are actually driving the cars don't have a spot in their driveway, or they live in the village, and if they park on the street, they're gonna get ticketed.
Right.
So it's my recommendation that you don't make that, because as you all well know, there is no overnight parking unless you live across from Amanda Moore like I do, and you can sneak your car in, okay? But I just please, let's not do that, and I don't think I'm opposed to I'm in favor of another commercial building in a residential area as they're talking, so, thank you.
So that's a good point you bring up, is because Michivan does leave those vans there all night long, so one of the vehicles you'd be ticketing would be the Michivan,
Yes.
not just personal.
I wouldn't be in favor of posting that for parking.
And why would we change it because another business wants to come in and use those spots?
I don't
Our
think-
people, it's
right.
been what
Yeah,
it
we
has
are changing,
been.
I think we agree
Yeah.
we're not changing it, right? I mean,
I wouldn't be in favor of that, but I don't think that's part of their proposal right now. It's
Let's
just,
let the planning commission work on it.
well, it was almost like a separate item to get it, to follow the regular parking restrictions that we have in the village.
is there anybody else?
I have a question, why would you be able to park there overnight and not, let's say, behind Younger's overnight? Because that's still, public parking.
Under the ordinance, that parking lot, all village lots also fall under the ordinance for overnight parking. We just overlooked the issue. That's why when people call in.
Some of it's residents that park there.
All right. Anybody else? All right, we're going to close public comments. We have one last agenda item, which is for a closed session. So I thank you all for your time, and stay healthy, and nice to see all these faces at this public meeting instead of on Zoom.
Get some serious film out of that one.
So at this time, I'm going to make a motion to go into closed session for strategy and negotiation sessions connected with the negotiation of collective bargaining agreements. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh,
I'm sorry, who was that second?
oh,
Thank you.
But please do a roll call.
okay, sure, for closed session?
Okay. Melzan?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Seidel?
Yes.
All right, 7-0, all in favor?
Thank you. All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposal for the frontline pay workers as presented.
Support?
We have a motion by President Malzahn, support by Hart. Will you do a roll call on that, please?
Melzan?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Seidel?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
All right, that's 7-0, motion carries.
Yes.
Carries. Zach?
Motion to adjourn?
Support?
Second? Oh.
Oh.
All in favor?
It is 9:14. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you and good night, everybody.